Sounds
You
good.
are, do you work with weight loss?
Yes, primarily.
Yeah, okay. And you're here to talk to health coaches about working with customers with weight losses. Have you been working with health coaches for very long?
I manage a team of other coaches, so in that regard, yes, the beginning of my career was in fitness management, so hiring trainers and helping them develop their businesses and stuff like that. So sort of throughout my career.
Okay, good. Okay, so what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see coaches making in their approach with their clients?
I think the biggest thing is not really getting to know the person and meeting them where they are. It's very easy to have had your own personal success or to see what's worked with other clients and to then try to sort of package that up neatly with a bow in like these steps that work for everyone, when in reality, yes, there are some general principles that apply to the overwhelming majority of clients, but what the actual application of those looks like for each client is different. And it's really important to get to know the individual and understand their personal hangups and the challenges that come with their lifestyle and their history, and then figure out, how do I apply what I know will help this person to their circumstances in a way that they will buy into the process and be putting in the consistent effort to see the results that they want.
Right. So they're probably at a different place than where some of the coaches expect them to be.
Yeah, and our clients are in a different place than we are. And I think what a lot of us get into the industry because we had our own challenges and we overcame them. We want to help other people do the same. But sometimes when you're further down the road, it's hard to bring yourself back to kind of those early steps and remind yourself what things felt like and how overwhelming what now might seem simple felt back then.
You forget about taking pictures to the grocery store and asking the people there what those foods are.
Exactly. Yeah. Or yeah, where to find stuff and right, all the stuff that comes easily now didn't used to or doesn't for our clients. And it's really important to, be able to kind of put ourselves in their shoes.
What are some strategies to help clients actually follow through on what they know to do, that you're giving them?
I love that question because that's really the crux of it is, we can say the same thing until we're blue in the face, but if we're not getting the buy-in and the consistent action from the client, it doesn't matter. I think, again, this goes back to kind of my previous answer, but figuring out what's actually preventing them from doing it is typically, if you ask somebody, why didn't you do what you said you'd do this week, you'll get some sort of like, I don't know, I guess I'm just lacking the willpower or the discipline, or I'm just not motivated enough. And we have a tendency to blame a personal shortcoming. But the reality of it is, it's not that. We all have enough willpower and discipline and motivation. It's usually, well, the issue is usually that we don't know what it actually is. So I think helping the client figure out, why specifically did you struggle this week? And not from a place of like shame or embarrassment or trying to beat yourself up, but more so, if we can pinpoint where things are getting sticky, then we can make a strategy to overcome it. So for
Right.
example, a lot of clients will say, I want to wake up and get a workout in or do a walk or stretch or something before work because I know, then the day gets away from me and I'll just feel better if I do it first thing. But then the alarm goes off and next thing you know, you've hit snooze 3 times. Now you're late to rush out the door. You didn't exercise, you didn't eat breakfast. So if you ask a client about that, often they'll say like, I don't know, I guess I just need to not hit snooze or, something like that. And you're like, well, that's not a strategy because tomorrow morning you're going to hit snooze again. So something actually has to be different. So it's figuring out, is it hard for you to hit snooze simply because the snooze button is within reach and it's just kind of the routine that you're in when you're groggy? And the solution could be, you put your phone or your alarm clock on the other side of the room. You have to get up to turn it off, splash some cold water in your face, you're up. Is it hard for you to not hit snooze because you're doom scrolling until 1 a.m. and then you're trying to wake up at 5 and you're actually just exhausted? Let's work on a bedtime routine. So it's actually kind of reverse engineering. What specifically is the root issue here? Let's solve for that. And then actually doing the stuff consistently feels way easier.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, putting the snooze button, if you had to walk through water to get to it, that'd wake you up.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are some common reasons why clients who know what to do still struggle to take action?
I think one of the biggest reasons is trying to do too much at once. Oftentimes we think we know what to do, and we do in a general sense. We probably all realize like I should probably snack less often, maybe drink less, have more vegetables, that sort of thing. But oftentimes with those kernels of truth, we get just kind of miscellaneous junk from wherever. Is that we tell ourselves, well, not only do I need to be doing all those things, but I also need to be fasting. I need to be paying attention to my net carbs. I need to be doing this, that, and the other thing. And we have this laundry list of things that we feel like we need to do. And one of the reasons it's hard to be consistent is when you're trying to do all those things at once. And it just feels like, well, if I'm dropping balls left and right, and the only way to be successful is to do all these things, then if I'm not doing all of them, why bother doing any of them? So that kind of like all or nothing approach where you oscillate between too much and not enough, I think is one of the main reasons. Another, I think, is that there's always sort of that lagging, indication that it's working. It would be nice if we did, one day of effort and we saw a little bit of evidence that it was working, and that would inspire us to keep going. But there is that sort of phase in the beginning and throughout the journey where you're putting in consistent effort and it doesn't feel like anything is changing. So having trust in the process and being able to collect objective data to tell yourself, like, are things working and it's just my perception that's off, or is actually nothing changing and I need to change my approach somehow?
Yeah, that reminds me of that meme that you always see on social media where they've got the ladder with the little rungs where the steps easy to get from one step to the other. And then they've got the other ones where there's no way you could possibly get your legs to go all the way up to the next step. And that's a lot like what you're saying is if you can take it in smaller steps, it's a lot easier,
That's exactly it. Yep.
less overwhelming. It's bad when we think in Facebook memes. How can health coaches identify and address the underlying barriers that prevent clients from following through on their plans?
I think it's about asking the right questions, or I guess first and foremost, it's about creating a relationship and an environment where your client feels comfortable being honest. Because I think we've probably all worked with clients who were just sort of wanting to please you and wanting to check the boxes and do the right thing and kind of get the back pats, but you could tell weren't necessarily being honest. So I think it's really important from the jump to create a dynamic where your client knows there's never going to be any shaming. I'm not going to guilt you or make you feel bad. Most of our clients are their own toughest critics. So despite what they might say, I need a drill sergeant, what they really need is someone to mirror compassion to them and understanding and help them see that there's nothing wrong with them, that they don't need to be perfect. So I think it starts with that. It starts with being an empathetic human being, showing that you yourself are not perfect and you don't expect them to be. And then asking the right questions to help them figure it out. Because if you just ask point blank, people are going to say, like, well, I don't know. If I knew, I wouldn't need you. So part of what you need to do is help them kind of scratch beneath the surface. So asking those kind of probing, open-ended questions that help them have those moments of awareness. And when appropriate, sort of interjecting your what you've seen. Because often, I don't know if you've heard the term, you can't read the label from inside the jar, but we use that in coaching a lot, where it's just like when it's your situation, it's hard to be objective and it's hard to kind of get that perspective that you need to make decisions. So part of where a coach comes in is we're not emotionally involved in the nitty gritty, so it's easier for us to say, well, here's something that I've noticed over our last few conversations. Have you noticed this? Or in other clients that I've seen this in, here's what's been helpful. So the right mix of asking questions and then sort of like giving your professional opinion.
I know I'm going to sound heartless when I ask this, but what if you get somebody that comes in and always is blaming it on something else and never accepts responsibility for what they were supposed to have gotten done from one week to the next? What do you
Yeah, it doesn't sound heartless at all. It sounds very relatable. And I bet every coach listening can think of that client who you're just like, oh, yes, every call was like pulling teeth. So I think, something that helped me, especially when I was in my earlier coaching days, was just to hear and get the reminder that, sort of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That like
Mhm.
there are limits to what a coach can do. Even a very, very good coach is going to have those clients where you just feel like you can't really get through to them. And it is not a reflection on you. And it doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be in the industry or that you can't help people. And I hope that, maybe a newer coach out there or somebody who just needs a reminder can hear that and be comforted, because having this type of client does not mean that you are, not meant to be a coach.
So what would be the ethical thing to do if you see somebody who absolutely will not do anything to move forward? Do you fire them?
That's a great question. I know people's opinions on this vary. My personal opinion is that the clients that I work with have come to me for a reason, and there is something about working with me that has drawn them in. And often, and I would imagine that a lot of coaches work with this type of demographic, often you have clients who feel like they have done everything, and they're often left feeling defeated and deflated and like there's something wrong with them, and like people have just given up on them left and right. So I'm of the opinion that you could probably present a scenario where I would say I need to part ways with the client, but generally speaking, I I don't believe in firing clients, because I feel like even if they are not changing, if they haven't fired me, if they're not saying I came to you to, to lose this weight and I haven't lost any, like I'm out, if they're continuing to want to have a coaching relationship with me, they must be getting something out of it. And maybe what they're getting out of it is just a person that listens to them for 30 minutes, and I'm their release so they can continue to show up in their day-to-day lives and not lose their minds. Maybe 3 years in, we'll finally have a breakthrough and we'll get somewhere. So I wouldn't want to fire a client and then be a contributing factor to someone feeling like they are truly hopeless. Like, oh my, another person fired me. Like, maybe I am worthless, that sort of thing. Um, so to get back to your original question, if I have a client who is just really sort of in that victim mentality of, well, no, I didn't do what we said, but here's why, and it's not my fault, we all have different kind of degrees of like the tough love in us. I am a softer kind of tough love giver. But what that would look like for me is empathizing and, sort of commiserating a bit, and recognize like, yeah, like, life is hard. There's a lot that's out of our control. And it sounds like you do, really have a lot on your plate right now, or things are really heavy right now. And then I always try to bring the conversation back to the positive and what we can control. And just sort of, remind the client these circumstances aren't necessarily your fault, but it is your responsibility to work on making some changes if you're not happy. And maybe right now that's not related to your weight. Maybe this is related to your mental health and just feeling like the load that you're under is so exhausting that you can't even think about, tracking your food or taking a walk because like there's just too much. So, maybe we take a left turn into some other aspect of health. But I think it's just kind of being consistent, being a good listener, and then always trying to, not getting kind of in the muck with them, but saying like, all right, I recognize like this really isn't fair and this is really hard. What do you feel like is something you could do this week that just would help you follow through and be someone who says, who does what she says she's going to do? Because that belief in yourself, that self-trust is going to make everything better. And, maybe a variation of that conversation happens week after week, month after month. And you just sort of hope that by having you in their life, that client is slightly better off than they would be without you.
Okay. What role do mindset and self-compassion play in bridging the gap between knowing and doing, and how can coaches foster these in their clients?
I think they are of the utmost importance. And I think it's an area that a lot of coaches kind of shy away from. I know when I first started, I've been doing this almost 20 years. I was very, sort of like textbook of, I became a personal trainer and I had that textbook that I could write a program and I knew what order to do and the reps and sets. And then I got into nutrition coaching and again, had this, kind of textbook formula. And all that's well and good. Like, of course, you should have the education, you should have the knowledge background. But when push comes to shove, it's generally not a knowledge deficit. It's that we're not doing. And what I've seen time and time again is like the longer a client has been trying to reach a goal and not been successful, the more they tend to blame themselves, think that there's something wrong with them, and feel like they need black and white rules in order to be successful, which I think most of us would agree is generally not what people need. Because that might make you successful in the short term, but then once you get resentful of the rules or you want to stop following them, you don't have this foundation, it all comes falling apart. So I think the missing piece for a lot of coaches is being able to talk mind stuff. And that, to me, I think the easiest way for a coach to start branching into that area is to mirror self-compassion and understanding for the client. A lot of our clients will tend to hone in on what's not going well. Is, we have a weekly check-in form where they talk about their wins, they talk about their challenges, and it's much more difficult for clients to acknowledge what's going well. And even if they have a lot that's going well, even if the scale is cooperating and everything is kind of, there's always like one thing that's not great, and that's what they tend to fixate on. So leading, showing them how, what thinking differently looks like. So on your coaching calls, really playing up and celebrating the wins and not just like, oh, great job, the scale's down, but more so like, I noticed that this happened this week. What did you do this week that helped facilitate that outcome? Really show them that the things that are going well are a result of their actions so that they feel empowered and they feel uplifted and they want to do more. When they have weeks where they just feel like I did nothing, everything fell apart, I'm the worst, showing them compassion there. It's like these things happen. It happens to all of us. Maybe give a personal example. It happened to me recently. Here's what it looked like. And, reminding them that they're not a bad person because of it, that they have the opportunity to just wipe the slate clean and learn from it. Most importantly, we have a term we use in our coaching called compassionate ownership. And, the compassion is the first piece. It's like not beating yourself up, not making a mountain out of a molehill, not making this small thing mean something about, your identity. And then recognizing that it's your life, these are your goals. It is your responsibility to do something about whatever's going on. So treat yourself with kindness and then also figure out if I don't want this to keep happening, what should I be doing differently in order to get a different outcome? And I think over time, those things will help your client start to shift their own spotlight and have their brains operate a little bit differently, showing them that our thoughts are a choice. And there's a phrase I love that by this time I've retold it so many times I've butchered the original quote, but the gist is that you can't stop a bird from landing on your head, but you can prevent it from building a nest in your hair. And I just love that for describing our thoughts, because we all have sort of these like default thoughts and beliefs we've picked up over time, and we don't even think to question them. And when you do, you realize I can't necessarily control what thoughts pop into my brain. I can't control if a bird swoops down and lands on my head, but I can make sure that those thoughts that aren't helping me or that bird doesn't get comfortable there. So I can shoo it along, and then I can be more intentional and proactive in choosing what I want to fill my brain with. And the more you practice that, and good news, we have a lot of opportunities to practice every day, the more you practice it, the easier it gets to think that way without as much effort.
Yeah, from what you said, I think that the most helpful thing is helping them to see every week what they're doing that's making a difference. And if they build on that and if they see that, then it's pretty easy to keep it going and to grow on it. You said you were doing a book. Is your book out?
It is the day we're recording this, the day before it officially comes out.
Oh, how
So I will
exciting.
imagine that by the time this is live, yes, it is out.
What is the name of the book?
It's called To Your Health, a lifestyle of health, happiness, and confidence.
Very good. And the listeners can get it on Amazon or on your
Yes,
website?
I will have a page on my website. It's also anywhere you buy books. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart.com, Target.com, all the places. And having just searched it myself on Amazon, I just put in my name and the title and boom, there it is.
Cool. That's
Yeah,
exciting, isn't
it's
it?
very cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we will have those links underneath the podcast notes. And then you have a podcast too, Live Diet Free.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, we'll have that link on there too. So anybody that wants to listen to your podcast can get to it pretty easy.
Awesome. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you for being here with me today.
Yeah, this is great. This is such an awesome resource for coaches, especially with online coaching. It can feel really isolating where you just, you want to talk to other people and you want to learn from other people. And I think it's awesome that you've created the platform to do that.
Yeah, it's funny because people say I listened to your podcast all weekend long. So they've been one after another after another.
I
Good.
know that's like the highest compliment. I occasionally get that from my listeners too, or somebody who's just found it and they're like, I started at the beginning and I'm working through, and I'm like, that's a lot of my voice.
Yeah. I think we're on almost 300 now. So
That's amazing.
yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much and good luck with your book.
Thank you
Congratulations.
so much. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.